All right, airstrikes battered Sudan's capital on Saturday as fighting entered a fourth week, only hours before the warring parties are to meet in Saudi Arabia for their fast direct talks today on Sunday. Hundreds of people have been killed since the outbreak of the conflict on the 15th of April between Sudan's de facto leader Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, who leads the regular army, and his deputy turned rival Mohammed Hamdan Daglo, who commands the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Now, the United Nations has expressed its concern over the escalating humanitarian crisis. Leila Mohammed has that report.
The fighting in Sudan has seen warplanes bomb targets in Khartoum and the rival general forces engage in intense street battles in the city of 5 million inhabitants. Multiple truces have been reached, but none has been respected so far. Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan confirmed the presence of representatives from both sides, but there was no immediate indication that the talks had begun. General Burhan of the Sudanese Armed Forces SAF had given his backing to a 7-day ceasefire announced by South Sudan on Wednesday, but early on Friday, the Rapid Support Forces RSF said it was extending by 3 days a previous truce brokered under the US-Saudi mediation. Sudanese Army spokesman Brigadier General Nabil Abdallah told reporters that the talks were only over the truce and how it can be correctly implemented to serve the humanitarian side for civilians.
It is heartbreaking what's happening in Sudan. It's very tragic because even if when ceasefires are agreed, unfortunately we see that there continues to be clashes. We see that probably by now 500 people at least had been killed.
At least 700 people have been killed in the fighting so far, according to the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project. Thousands more have been wounded and hundreds of thousands displaced, either internally or across the border to neighboring countries. The Sudanese Doctors Union said 479 of the dead were civilians. Another 2,518 civilians were wounded.
We understand that even in the streets of Khartoum, some of the corpses had not yet been collected. We have seen attacks on civilian infrastructure. Especially, you imagine, Khartoum is a widespread. There are no high buildings, high-rise buildings. It's a widespread urban area. You can imagine if you start bombarding there, or if you start having fights in these areas, the civilians suffer.
Neighboring South Sudan, which has negotiated the 7-day truce extension, said late Friday that its president Salva Kiir had spoken to the warring generals about, quote, his concerns and those of the IGAD leaders from the East African regional grouping. The UN Children's Agency UNICEF warned Friday that the situation in Sudan had become fatal for a frighteningly large number of children. The UN Agency on Human Rights says that various aspects of human rights violations continue to happen in Sudan.
Sometimes in the past, there was a tendency to say we only need to do civil and political rights. We don't need to do economic, social and cultural. But that's wrong. We need to do all of it. And we need to do all of it together. And that's really important.
Nearly 450,000 civilians have already fled their homes since the fighting began, including more than 115,000 who sought refuge in neighboring countries, according to the International Organization for Migration. Leila Mohammed, NTV.